My name is Emily Carter, and I am 34 years old. For 10 years, I believed my life was stable. Not perfect. Not glamorous. But safe. I had a husband, a small home filled with quiet routines, and a beautiful 6-year-old son named Noah whose laughter made every difficult day worth it. For a decade, I believed my marriage was built on trust. I was wrong. Because one afternoon, with only a few cold sentences, my entire world shattered. It happened on a rainy Thursday. I still remember the sound of the rain tapping against the kitchen window as I waited for my husband to come home. Dinner was already prepared, pasta and soup, Noah's favorite meal. When the front door opened, I smiled automatically. "Jason, you're late." But the words stopped in my throat. Because the man standing in the doorway didn't look like my husband anymore. His expression was distant. Detached. Almost bored. And standing beside him was a woman I had never seen before. Tall. Elegant. Expensive clothes. The kind of confidence that came from knowing the world always opened doors for you. Jason didn't even try to hide it. "This is Victoria Lawson," he said flatly. My heart began to beat faster. I looked from him to her, confused. "Why is she here?" Jason sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Emily, we need to talk." Those 4 words. The most terrifying words in any marriage. 30 minutes later, my life was over. Jason told me he had fallen in love with Victoria. He said it casually, like someone discussing a change of plans. "She understands me better," he explained. "And her family can give me opportunities you never could." I stared at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. 10 years. 10 years of shared memories. 10 years of building a life together. And suddenly, none of it mattered. Then he said the sentence that still echoes in my mind. "Victoria's father is a billionaire." As if that explained everything. As if money was enough reason to destroy a family. The divorce happened quickly, painfully, and unfairly. The house was legally in Jason's name because he had purchased it before we married. Most of our savings were in accounts controlled by him. Lawyers were expensive, and every court appearance drained the little money I had left. By the time the legal battle ended, I had almost nothing. Just a small apartment. A growing pile of bills. And a 6-year-old boy who depended on me for everything. One evening, Noah asked me a simple question. "Mommy, are we poor now?" My heart broke. I forced a smile and hugged him tightly. "No, sweetheart," I whispered. "We're just starting a new chapter." But the truth was terrifying. If I didn't find a job soon, I wouldn't even be able to pay his school fees next month. Weeks passed. Job applications. Interviews. Rejections. Again and again. Every employer wanted someone younger, more experienced, or willing to work longer hours for less pay. Then one night, while scrolling through job listings with tired eyes, I saw something unusual. Live-in caregiver needed. Private estate. High salary. My heart skipped a beat. The job description explained that the patient was an elderly billionaire suffering from severe mental instability. Most people would have avoided that job immediately. But I wasn't most people. I was a desperate mother trying to survive. Without thinking twice, I submitted my application. 2 days later, I received a phone call. The interview was immediate. The address they gave me made my hands shake. Because the estate was located in the most expensive neighborhood in the entire city. The mansion appeared at the end of a long stone driveway. Tall iron gates opened slowly as I approached. Behind them stood a house so massive it looked more like a luxury hotel than a private residence. I swallowed nervously and rang the doorbell. A moment later, the door opened. Standing there was a woman in her late 30s with perfect posture and an icy calm expression. "You must be Emily Carter," she said. Her voice was smooth but strangely cold. Yes, I replied quietly. She stepped aside. I'm Sophia Bennett, Mr. Bennett's daughter. Something about her eyes made me uneasy. But I ignored the feeling and followed her inside. The mansion interior was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, paintings worth more than my entire life savings. But despite the beauty, the house felt strangely empty. Like a museum instead of a home. As we walked down a long hallway, Sophia spoke calmly. You should understand something before you begin. Her tone was emotionless. My father's condition is difficult. How difficult? I asked. She glanced at me briefly. Most caregivers quit within 3 days. That should have frightened me. But instead, I simply said, I won't quit. Not because I was brave. Because I had no choice. We finally stopped in front of a large wooden door. Sophia opened it slowly. My father's room. Inside, an old man sat in a wheelchair facing the window. His hair was grey and messy. His hands trembled slightly. For a moment, he didn't notice us. Then he turned. His sharp eyes locked onto mine. Who is that? He shouted suddenly. I froze. Sophia sighed. This is the new caregiver. The old man's face twisted with anger. I don't want another one, he yelled. Suddenly he grabbed a glass from the table and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. My heart jumped. Sophia barely reacted. You see, she said calmly. This is normal. But something strange happened next. I slowly walked closer and spoke softly. Hello, Mr. Bennett. My name is Emily. I'm here to help you. He stared at me. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then unexpectedly, he turned his wheelchair back toward the window. And ignored me. Sophia raised an eyebrow. That's actually better than usual. The rest of the day was exhausting. He shouted. Refused food. Knocked over a chair. But somehow, I managed to survive the first day. That evening, a housemaid showed me my small bedroom upstairs. It wasn't luxurious. But it was comfortable. And most importantly, it meant stability for Noah. At 9 p.m., I walked downstairs to get water. The mansion was silent. Almost too silent. As I entered the living room, I suddenly heard laughter. A man's voice. Something about it felt familiar. My heart started pounding. Slowly, I stepped into the room. A tall man stood near the bar holding a drink. When he turned around, my world stopped. Because the man standing there was my ex-husband, Jason. The same man who had destroyed my life. He looked at me slowly. Then a cruel smile appeared on his face. Well, he said. I guess life didn't work out very well for you. My hands began to tremble. Jason took a sip of his drink and laughed. So this is what you do now, he mocked. Working here as a caregiver? He stepped closer. Lowering his voice, he whispered something that made my heart sink. You're basically a servant in my house. And in that moment, I realized something horrifying. The billionaire's daughter who owned this mansion was the same woman my husband had married. For a few seconds after seeing Jason, I couldn't breathe. Of all the houses in the city, of all the jobs I could have taken, I had somehow ended up working inside the home of the woman who destroyed my marriage. Jason leaned casually against the bar table as if the situation was the most entertaining thing he had seen all week. You look shocked, he said with a slow smile. I forced myself to stay calm. I didn't know this was your house, I replied quietly. Jason laughed. Oh, it's not exactly my house, he said proudly. It belongs to Sophia's family. Then he gestured around the massive living room filled with luxury furniture, paintings, and crystal chandeliers. But soon enough, it will be. His tone was arrogant, full of confidence. The confidence of someone who believed the world was finally bending in his favor. I clenched my hands slightly, trying to stop them from shaking. Jason walked slowly around me, studying my face. "Life is funny, isn't it?" he continued. 10 years ago, you were my wife." He paused and smirked. "And now you're working here as a caregiver." His words cut deep, like tiny knives. For a moment, I truly considered leaving. Packing my bag. Walking out of that mansion forever. But then another image appeared in my mind. My son. Noah. His small face. His bright smile. His school uniform. The tuition bill sitting on the kitchen table. I swallowed my pride. Because sometimes survival requires silence. Jason noticed the change in my expression. "Oh," he said slowly. "You need this job." I didn't answer. But the silence was enough. He chuckled softly. "Don't worry," he said mockingly. "I won't fire you." Then he leaned closer and whispered, "Someone has to take care of the crazy old man." My chest tightened, but I refused to react. Jason finished his drink and walked toward the stairs. Before leaving, he looked back at me one last time. "Good night, Emily." Then he added with a cruel smile, "And try not to get hit by anything tomorrow. He likes throwing things." Then he disappeared upstairs, leaving me standing alone in the silent mansion. That night, I barely slept. The ceiling of my small room stared back at me as my thoughts raced. Part of me wanted to quit, to escape that house and never see Jason or Sophia again. But the stronger part of me kept reminding me why I was there. Noah needed me. I couldn't fail him. No matter how humiliating the situation became. The next morning, my real work began. When I entered Mr. Bennet's room, he was already awake. The moment he saw me, he frowned. "You again," he muttered. "Yes," I said calmly. "Me again." He rolled his wheelchair slightly away from the table. "I already told everyone I don't need a babysitter." "I'm not here to babysit you," I replied gently. "I'm here to help." He looked at me suspiciously. For a few seconds, he studied my face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then suddenly he grabbed a small book from the table and threw it across the room. "Leave," he shouted. The book hit the wall and fell to the floor. I slowly walked over, picked it up, and placed it back on the table. "I'm not leaving," I said quietly. For a moment, he looked surprised. Then he turned away again, muttering to himself. The morning routine was difficult. Sometimes he shouted. Sometimes he refused food. Sometimes he knocked objects off the table. But slowly, I began to understand something. Mr. Bennet wasn't violent for no reason. He was frustrated, angry, trapped inside a life he could no longer control. When I spoke calmly, he became slightly calmer. When I gave him space, he stopped yelling. Little by little, things improved. By the third day, something small but important happened. He allowed me to help him drink water without shouting. It wasn't a big victory, but it was progress. Meanwhile, Jason appeared in the house often. And every time he saw me, he made sure to embarrass me. Once he loudly warned me to be careful with a tray because servants should always be careful. Another time he laughed while speaking to one of Sophia's friends. She used to be my wife. The woman looked at me with pity. Jason simply smiled proudly. Each time it happened, I forced myself to stay quiet. Because losing this job was not an option. A week passed. Then something strange happened. One morning, 2 doctors arrived at the mansion. They carried medical bags and walked directly to Mr. Bennet's room. Sophia came with them. They closed the door behind them. But through the walls, I could hear voices. Low. Serious. After about 30 minutes, the doctors left. When I entered the room afterward, Mr. Bennet looked worse than ever. His hands were shaking more violently. His eyes looked confused. And suddenly he began shouting again. Louder than before. It felt like all the progress we had made during the week had disappeared. Suddenly he grabbed a plate from the table and threw it across the room. Food scattered everywhere. Get out, he yelled angrily. I tried to calm him. Mr. Bennet, please. Before I could finish, he grabbed a glass of water and threw it toward me. The glass hit my shoulder and shattered on the floor. The noise brought two house servants running into the room. Sir, please calm down, one of them said. But Mr. Bennet was completely out of control now. He pushed his wheelchair forward, trying to grab anything he could throw. One of the servants quickly opened a cabinet and pulled out a medical kit. I'm sorry, sir, he said nervously. He prepared a syringe. Within seconds, they gave Mr. Bennet an injection. At first, he kept struggling. But slowly his movements became weaker. His shouting faded. Finally, he went silent. His head dropped slightly to the side. The medicine had taken effect. The room became quiet again. One servant sighed. This happens sometimes, he told me. But something didn't feel right. Just yesterday, Mr. Bennet had been improving. Now suddenly he looked worse than ever. That night, something happened that changed everything. I was walking down the hallway near the study room when I heard voices inside. Sophia's voice. And Jason's. The door was slightly open. I wasn't trying to listen. But then I heard something that made me freeze. The medicines are working, Sophia said quietly. Jason laughed softly. How long until he completely loses control? Sophia replied calmly. Maybe a few more weeks. My heart started beating faster. Then Jason said something that made my blood run cold. And once the doctors declare him mentally unfit. Sophia finished the sentence. Everything becomes ours. They both laughed. I stepped away from the door quickly before they could see me. My mind was racing. The medicines. The injections. The sudden decline. Suddenly everything made sense. They weren't treating Mr. Bennet. They were destroying his mind on purpose. And if they succeeded, they would take control of his entire empire. The next morning, while helping Mr. Bennet with breakfast, something unexpected happened. For the first time since I met him, his eyes looked completely clear. He leaned closer and whispered, "Listen carefully." I froze. Then he said something that changed everything. "They're trying to make me look insane." For a moment, I couldn't move. Mr. Bennet's words echoed inside my mind. They're trying to make me look insane. Part of me wanted to believe he was confused again. After all, everyone in the mansion said he was mentally unstable. But another part of me remembered the conversation I had overheard the night before. Sophia's voice. Jason laughing. The medicines are working. Once the doctors declare him mentally unfit, everything becomes ours. Slowly, I looked into Mr. Bennet's eyes again. They were clear. Focused. Not wild or confused like before. Just tired. And full of fear. He grabbed my wrist gently. "Please," he whispered. "Tell me the truth. Did you hear something?" My heart was beating so fast it felt like it might explode. For a few seconds I hesitated. Because if I told him what I knew, there would be no turning back. But then I thought about something. How helpless I had felt when Jason destroyed my life. How powerless I had been during the divorce. How unfair the world could be when powerful people decided to take everything from you. I looked at Mr. Bennet again. And quietly said, "Yes." His eyes widened slightly. I told him everything. About the voices I had heard behind the study door. About Sophia saying the medicines were working. About Jason saying that once doctors declared him mentally unfit, They would control everything. For several seconds, Mr. Bennet didn't say a word. Then something inside him seemed to break. His shoulders slowly dropped. Tears filled his eyes. "I knew it," he whispered. "I knew something was wrong." He stared down at his trembling hands. "I built everything in this house," he said slowly. "My companies, my fortune, my life." His voice shook. "And now my own daughter wants to steal it while I'm still alive." Seeing that strong old man suddenly look so helpless made my chest ache. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, I didn't see a crazy billionaire. I saw a father who had been betrayed. And a man who was slowly losing everything. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me again. "Why are you helping me?" he asked quietly. "You don't even know me." I thought about that question carefully. Then I answered honestly. "Because I know what it feels like when someone takes your life away from you." I told him about my divorce. About Jason leaving me. About raising my son alone. About how desperate I had been when I applied for the caregiver job. Mr. Bennet listened silently. When I finished speaking, he looked at me with a new expression. "Respect. You stayed," he said softly. "Even when my daughter's husband humiliated you." I shrugged slightly. "My son needs food more than I need pride." For the first time, a faint smile appeared on his face. "You're stronger than you think, Emily." Then his expression became serious again. "If we don't stop them, they will win." I nodded slowly. "So what do we do?" He leaned back in his wheelchair, thinking carefully. Then he whispered something that surprised me. "We let them believe they are winning." That night, we created a plan. The most dangerous plan I had ever been part of. First, we needed to confirm the truth about the medicines. The next morning, while organizing the medical cabinet, I carefully examined the pills and injections that were supposed to help Mr. Bennet. Something was immediately wrong. The dosage was extremely high. High enough to cause confusion, mood swings, and memory problems. Exactly the symptoms Sophia had been describing to the doctors. My stomach twisted. They weren't treating him. They were destroying his mind slowly. I contacted an old family friend who worked as a doctor. Quietly. Carefully. Without mentioning names. After reviewing the medication list, his answer confirmed our fears. These drugs, in that dosage, would absolutely cause severe mental instability. That was all the proof we needed. But exposing Sophia and Jason wouldn't be easy. They had lawyers, doctors, connections. If we accused them without evidence, they would simply call Mr. Bennet insane and fire me immediately. We needed proof. And we needed time. So Mr. Bennet suggested something risky. "Let's give them exactly what they want." I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He smiled slightly. "I'll pretend to get worse." The plan was simple. But dangerous. I secretly stopped giving him the harmful pills. Instead, I replaced them with proper medication provided by the trusted doctor. Slowly, his mind began clearing. But whenever Sophia entered the room, Mr. Bennet performed. He shouted. He threw pillows. He pretended to be confused. One time he even knocked over a chair and screamed at the wall. Sophia watched with satisfaction. Her smile grew bigger each day. Jason often stood beside her, enjoying the show. "He's getting worse," Sophia said proudly one afternoon. Jason laughed. "Good." Every time I heard those words, anger burned inside my chest. But I stayed silent. Because they had no idea we were watching them too. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. For 3 months, the performance continued. Every time Sophia visited, Mr. Bennet acted unstable. Every time she left, he returned to his calm and intelligent self. During that time, we quietly contacted lawyers. private investigators, and even members of his company's board. Evidence began building. Medical records, medication analysis, recorded conversations. Everything pointed to one thing: a conspiracy to steal his empire. Finally, the moment arrived. One morning Sophia announced an important meeting. Doctors, lawyers, board members. Everyone would gather at the mansion to discuss Mr. Bennet's condition. Jason looked extremely confident that day. Sophia looked even happier. "This is the final step," she told him proudly. "Once the doctors declare him mentally unstable, the court will give me control of everything." Jason smiled. "We'll finally own the empire." Standing beside Mr. Bennet's wheelchair, I felt my heart racing. Because they had no idea what was about to happen. The meeting began in the grand living room. Everyone sat around a long table. Sophia spoke dramatically about her father's dangerous mental condition. The doctors nodded. Jason leaned back comfortably in his chair. Everything seemed to be going exactly according to their plan. Until suddenly, Mr. Bennet moved. Instead of shouting or acting confused, he slowly sat up straight in his wheelchair. Then he spoke calmly. "I don't think that will be necessary." The entire room went silent. Sophia's face turned pale. "Father." Mr. Bennet looked directly at her. "For 3 months, he said calmly. "I have been pretending." Jason jumped to his feet. "What nonsense is this?" But Mr. Bennet continued speaking, explaining the medicines, the manipulation, the plan to steal his companies. One of the lawyers opened a folder. "We have evidence," he said, "and recorded conversations." Jason's confident expression disappeared instantly. The room turned toward him and Sophia. And suddenly, their perfect plan collapsed. The living room was completely silent. Everyone stared at Mr. Bennet as if they had just witnessed a miracle. For months they had believed he was unstable. But now he sat straight in his wheelchair, his voice calm and steady. Sophia's face turned pale. "Father, what are you saying?" she whispered. Mr. Bennet looked directly at her. "I'm saying that for 3 months, I have been pretending." Gasps spread across the room. Jason jumped up from his chair. "This is ridiculous," he said angrily. He's confused again. But one of the lawyers calmly opened a folder. "I'm afraid that isn't the case." Inside were medical reports showing the dangerous medication dosage Sophia had been giving her father. Another document contained audio recordings. The room filled with the sound of Sophia's voice. "The medicines are working." Then Jason's voice. "Once the doctors declare him mentally unfit, everything becomes ours." Sophia's hands began shaking. Jason's face turned completely white. Mr. Bennet then pointed toward me. "This woman saved my life," he said. "If she had not discovered the truth, they would have stolen everything." All eyes turned toward me. Sophia screamed in anger. "You ruined everything." But it was already too late. Mr. Bennet's lawyer calmly stood up. "The police have already been informed." The doors of the mansion suddenly opened. 2 officers walked inside. Sophia tried to protest. "This is a misunderstanding." Jason looked around the room desperately, searching for support. But the board members of Mr. Bennet's company were staring at them with pure anger. The police officers approached calmly. "Mr. Jason Walker. Ms. Sophia Bennet. You are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse." Sophia shouted. Jason tried to argue. But within minutes they were escorted out of the mansion. For the first time since I had known him, Jason looked truly powerless. The same man who had laughed at me for being poor now stood there in handcuffs. Our eyes met for a moment. But this time, he looked away first. After the room finally emptied, silence filled the mansion again. Mr. Bennet turned toward me. His voice was much softer now. "You stayed when everyone else would have left." I didn't know what to say. I had only done what felt right. He looked at his lawyers. "Prepare the documents." They nodded. One of them then said something that shocked everyone. "Mr. Bennet has decided to transfer a large portion of his estate to Emily Carter." I stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, you don't have to do that." He smiled gently. "You came here as a caregiver," he said. "But you became the daughter I should have had." Tears filled my eyes. Just a few months earlier I had walked into that mansion as a desperate mother trying to survive. Now everything had changed. Weeks later, life looked completely different. Mr. Bennet recovered quickly once the harmful medication stopped. His companies remained under his control. Jason and Sophia faced serious criminal charges. But the biggest change happened in my own life. With Mr. Bennet's help, I finally had stability, a home, security, and a future for my son. One evening, Noah asked me a question while we sat in our new living room. "Mom, are we okay now?" I hugged him tightly. "Yes," I whispered. "We're more than okay. Sometimes life destroys everything you built. Sometimes people betray you in ways you never expected. But occasionally, when you choose to do the right thing, even when it's hard, life gives you something better than revenge. It gives you a second chance. And that second chance can change everything."